Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to visit me in my online classroom. My name is Krista Anderson, and I will be teaching you a little something about understanding hypothesis testing and the role of p-value. Hypothesis testing is a method of evaluating samples to learn more about characteristics in a given population. There are 4 steps to hypothesis testing. The first is to state the null hypothesis. The second is to set the criteria for the decision. The third is to compute the test statistic. And the fourth is to make a decision. We will be going into each one of these steps in greater detail. Hypothesis testing can be very, very useful and important in the field of education. The example that we're going to give today is to seek to find out if there is a relationship between the amount of sleep students get on average and student achievement. Our sample for this study are 7th grade middle school students from across our local district. Step 1 in hypothesis testing is to state the null hypothesis. In this case, the null hypothesis is that there is no relationship between the amount of sleep on average and student achievement. In step 2 of hypothesis testing, we set the criteria for the decision. The most standard criteria set is 5%. That's a p-value of 0.05, and a p-value of 0.05 or below is what we consider to be statistically significant. A p-value is the probability of obtaining a sample mean given that the value stated in the null hypothesis is true. This number can vary between 0 and 1 and can never be negative. Step 3 of hypothesis testing is to compute the test statistic. We need to choose which test we will use to measure to find the p-value. In this situation, we will look to our flowchart and we will determine that the type of data is quantitative. The type of question being asked is one of relationships, and we have one predictor. We'll be looking to see if the achievement score is affected by the amount of time that students sleep on average. The measurement that we're using is continuous, and we're looking for the degree of relationship, which means we will choose to use the Pearson correlation. Now that we have identified the type of test that we will use, we will utilize the SPSS software to find the p-value and to construct a scatter plot for further analysis. The first thing that we need to do is to identify what the 2 variables are that will be correlating in the end. The first variable is the average sleep per hours in each week that each student had logged. Then we will use the variable of the percent correct on the end of the year achievement test. We will analyze our data by choosing to correlate by variate. We will choose each of the 2 variables used and then choose the Pearson correlation coefficient. We will receive our data for further analysis and to make our comparison and decision in a moment. Finally, in SPSS, we will construct a scatter graph or scatter plot from our data so that we will be able to analyze what type of a correlation we have. In hypothesis testing, step number 4, we make a decision. We will compare the computed p-value to the criteria that we set of 0.05. By looking at our data, we can see that our level of significance is 0.000, which will actually get rounded to 0.005, which is statistically significant. We then use that information to make our decision. With a p-value that is low, we choose to reject the HO. Our null hypothesis was that there was no relationship between the amount of average sleep and the student achievement. We will reject our null hypothesis. The next thing that we choose to do is take a look at our scatter graph. Through hypothesis testing, we were able to conclude that there is a statistically significant correlation between the average amount of sleep and student achievement at the 0.05 level, with a p-value of 0.005 for our sample. By analyzing the scatter plot, we can state that there is a positive correlation between these variables. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn with me today. This type of hypothesis testing can help us confirm and predict trends that we see in data across different areas of education. Similar tests can help us see relationships or differences between attendance and achievement, attendance and positive effect towards school, numbers of school attended over the time a student is in a K-12 program and their achievement. And that data can provide us with information to drive district-wide decision-making. Again, thank you for taking time to learn with me, and I hope you were able to get a little something from this presentation.